when we buy a movie ticket, we're creating a little bit of a social contract with a bunch of people we never met to go into a dark room and experience something and be quiet and be passive and be submissive and not stop the experience. The experience is in a dominant position relative to our consciousness. And we do it willingly because it's one of the few times in our lives where we do that and where we stop our phone from ringing and we give ourselves that respite and we give ourselves a moment, might be a 2-hour moment, might be a 3-hour moment, to experience something uninterrupted and unbroken. And if we have to get up and go to the bathroom, you run because you don't want to miss something. And that's a unique experience. I think as a filmmaker, you know that you have a dominant or authoritative position relative to the audience's consciousness, and you have to honor them, which is, I'm not going to do something that's so obvious you can figure it out exactly, and you get to the end and it's been predictable, but I also don't want to do something that's intentionally obscure to where I'm just sort of pirouetting how smart I am and all the big words I can use, and you're lost. And we've all seen the ones that strike that perfect balance, where you're rewarded for having paid attention and picking up the clues, and you go, aha. And I think there's one thing that a lot of filmmakers take a while to figure out, which is it's okay for the audience to be ahead of you. It's okay because the tension that goes before a reveal or a cathartic moment is so much more delicious when it's actually paid off in a way that you hope for than some utter surprise that's not satisfying at all. Sometimes filmmakers create too much importance around the idea of surprise versus paying off in a satisfying way. It's all about this contract. It's about this dance with the audience and honoring them and encouraging them to participate and pay attention.
Well, I can drive that loader. I have a Class 2 rating.
Be my guest.
Part of the way you do that is you plant something and then you pay it off and you say, see how it works? I'm going to put something here and you're going to think about it and then it's going to be satisfying here.
Get away from her, you bitch!
So that creates a bit of a promise that we're going to continue to do that, and we're going to do that right through to the end of the film. The plant might be something that only the audience knows, that character needs and wants and can't express. And you feel that, I wish I could just walk into the screen and shake that other person and say, look at what this character is going through. You know, you want to create that tension. You want to create that sense of wanting to be involved and playing and participating. It's participatory. People say that film is not interactive, that only games are an interactive medium. I don't think that's true at all. I think films are highly interactive. You can't change the outcome, but you can imagine various outcomes in real time as you're going on. You're playing out those possibilities. It could go this way, it could go that way, it could be this, it could be that. And if you play against the audience's expectation in a satisfying way, that's good, keeps them playing the game. If you play to the audience's expectation in a satisfying way, something that they want to see happen, and then it happens. Maybe it doesn't happen the way they thought it was going to happen. Maybe it has to be earned in a difficult way that's hard for the characters, or maybe the character has to make a sacrifice that you didn't see coming to get that result that you wanted. You know, But this is all part of the dance. They know all the gags. So the question is, how do you play against it slightly, or how do you use a little bit of sleight of hand to disguise what you're doing, or how do you lead them on thinking that it's going to be one thing and then switch track into something else? You know, you're doing it at the writing stage. You should be going through the script and saying, you know, what am I giving the audience here? What expectation does that create? How am I paying that off? Or how am I working against that expectation later? It's very important for filmmakers to ask themselves these questions. Well, I think one of the first principles of building tension is you have to care about the character, and you have to understand the jeopardy, or at least that there is jeopardy for that character. That might be anything from a free-floating anxiety that something is going to happen and you don't know what it is because you've just walked into an alien spacecraft, or you've just walked into a haunted house, or there's some kind of really bad negative outcome that's tied to a ticking clock. You know, the classic example is the bomb under the table, because I think time is a factor on building tension. You have to believe that it's not going to happen in 2 weeks or in an hour. It's going to happen in the next few seconds or maybe the next minute. So you have to be invested in the outcome. You have to care about the character. You have to be brought in subjectively enough into the moment that you're moving through the world, the space, the journey with that character. And you have to have enough outside information to know that that character is going into increasing jeopardy. So cross-cutting is a good way to do that. Cutting away to the adversary or the train coming or whatever the thing is that escalates. Creating a constant sense of escalation, creating a sense of frustration.
Don't make me bust you up, man!
You're cutting to a very mundane scene, but in the context of it being a tension cross-cutting scenario, it's a solution that might happen but isn't going to happen. And they could have been saved but for had they just answered the phone, or something has happened, the ringer got turned off, and you've established that. You're building tension in all these ways. You have to be led to believe as the audience that something is going to happen soon. And then you prolong it. You don't just make it happen, you prolong it. So you've informed the audience in some way, stylistically, that something bad is going to happen, or something very bad could happen to your character, and then you prolong it. So you've told them to be in that state, and then you suspend that state and then hold them in that state, so they don't feel like it's getting just snatched away from them before they've had a chance to experience and feel it. Now that might be a state of happiness, might be a state of wonder. You don't want to give them a little taste of wonder and then take it away. You want to stay in it. So tension is the same thing. So there's a prolongation of tension, and that's usually done with cross-cutting two narratives that you feel are converging to each other. There are entire films that build tension across the arc of the film, or there are films that build tension across an entire act of the film, let's say. So Titanic would be an example where tension slowly builds over time. Here's a clue. They got the iceberg warning. Captain puts it in his pocket, doesn't do anything. Tells him to speed up.
Oh, not to worry. Quite normal for this time of year. In fact, we're speeding up. I've just ordered the last boilers lit.
It's like, well, wait a minute. There's an iceberg ahead. So you're building tension at a relatively mild level. Once they hit the iceberg, now you're building tension for your main characters. Who's going to get off? How are they going to be saved? What are the obstacles that are going to be in their path? Bad stuff is coming, and we move relentlessly toward that. And we even, release the tension for a while. Rose gets in the lifeboat, and it's very sad, but at least she's going to get away. Then she jumps back on the ship. Now you've just ratcheted up again. It's important to understand the meta tension that can rise across an entire section of a movie until it has some kind of cathartic or epiphanal ending. In that case, the ship plunges, the scene on the raft, and Jack dies, and then you get into the kind of series of codas that kind of resolve the film emotionally and thematically. And the tension is released at that point. And a great example, recent example, is Dunkirk. That's 2 hours plus of just rising tension. And it's very skillfully done, and the score is a major component of that. It just builds and builds and builds, and there's just this feeling of dread and anxiety that builds across that entire film until those characters finally get pulled off that beach at the end, and they're on those boats going home, and you feel like you've won, you've earned this feeling of delivery, of transport. And so, that's a case where it just was unrelenting across the entire movie on a rising curve. And that's an incredible thing to be able to modulate that way. So tension is an art, and it's a discipline, and it can come in small amounts, it can come in longer sections, and it can come across an entire story arc.